How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Liberation Hour. We are now on episode number 2 of this podcast. I hope everybody is doing well. Hope everybody's had a great week. I wanted to just start this by firstly just thanking everybody for the support that you've given me over the last week, whether it be on social media or the increase of subscribers, everybody who's checked out that first video. Of course, the first video last week with Kendrick Haskins talking about the Israel-Palestine issue, along with all the other sub-issues I had on the show, is up on the channel. You can check that out along with this one. And again, I am planning on posting weekly podcasts of this every week. So I appreciate everybody for supporting me on the new venture. Again, I am still working on an intro video right now, so hopefully the intro is a little better than last week. Got at least the logo a little bit bigger out here. So yeah, but we're working on some stuff for sure, and definitely going to keep things going. And if anybody has, any requests of issues they want me to touch on or talk about, or recommendations for anything at all, feel free to shoot me a message or shoot me a DM on my Instagram at A2Jack or on my Twitter at A2J15. But this week has been really interesting. I've talked to a lot of people over the last couple days. I'm recording this on Sunday, July 14th. That there's decades where nothing happens, and then or decades where weeks happen, and then there's weeks where decades happen. And this week was certainly a week where decades happen, and it's mainly because of the big issue which I wanted to talk about, and that is the issue regarding Donald Trump's assassination attempt that took place in Pennsylvania at his rally. I had a few things I wanted to talk about regarding this. So firstly, just to give some background, we'll go ahead and touch on some of these articles here. So let's go ahead and pull up this one from USA Today. Trump wounded at a rally, an assassination attempt, and the gunman was killed. Former President Donald Trump survived a brazen assassination attempt Saturday evening as a 20-year-old gunman opened fire on a campaign rally, injured his right ear, and killed a spectator. Was like literally 2 inches further to his right, and he's probably dead. But it ended up just grazing his ear. I know that there was a lot of wind out there as well, so the wind may have pushed the bullet a little bit to where it just grazed him in the ear. But basically, he was bloodied up, and then the Secret Service agents really, kind of got up on stage, hopped on him, and then they took out the gunman, who was about 135 yards away. We'll get into the gunman here a little bit more in a moment, but wanted to pull up a couple more things. Firstly, this picture right here is going to define potentially the 2024 election. Regardless of how you feel, this picture is something that's going to probably live in a picture that's going to live in infamy, a picture that says a million words right here. This is something that I've already seen, being put on T-shirts, and honestly, regardless of people's thoughts on Trump and his views and what he's done for the country, and if he ends up becoming president again, what he will do for the country, this photo is going to be an infamous photo 100 years from now. It's just. I was joking around because Trump kept putting up, a fist when he was getting helped off into the car. I was joking around with a couple friends of mine saying, every fist he puts up is another 15, 20,000 votes in a swing state. And you really have to wonder the impact this is going to have on the election. And we're going to be talking about that here in a few. But before I do so, I want to talk about a couple of more things. Firstly, I wanted to pull up this video actually from the BBC. There was a Trump supporter who was actually there. It wasn't at the rally, it was just outside of it. I believe it was with some family, and he said he saw the gunman on the roof. There's been a lot of reports from people at the rally, and we've learned a lot more since this yesterday, that a lot of people saw this gunman with a rifle on the roof, which is interesting that so many people saw this, but not the Secret Service. And so it brings up questions of how bad of a job the Secret Service did. Let's pull up this video, and I'll have you guys listen to it here. Sorry for the buffering here. Give it just 1 second.
Positive. It's one of the driving forces of mankind.
Sorry for the ad. Here we go.
So we walked up, and probably 5 to 7 minutes of Trump speaking. I'm estimating here. I have no idea, but we noticed the guy crawling, bear crawling up the roof of the building beside us, 50 feet away from us. So we're standing there, you know, we're pointing at the guy crawling up the roof.
And he had a gun, right?
He had a rifle.
A rifle.
We could clearly see him with a rifle. Absolutely. We're pointing at him. The police are down there running around on the ground. We're like, hey, man, there's a guy on the roof with a rifle. And the police were like, huh, what? You know, like they didn't know what was going on. You know, we're like, hey, right here on the roof. We can see him from right here. We see him. You know, he's crawling. And next thing you know, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, why is Trump still speaking? Why have they not pulled him off the stage? I'm standing there pointing at him for, you know, 2 or 3 minutes. Secret Service is looking at us from the top of the barn. I'm pointing at that roof, just standing there like this. And next thing you know, 5 shots ring out.
So you're
And basically, that's all I need to show right there. I don't want to pull up the actual footage of what happened because I don't want anything to get, demonetized or, get striked or whatever because of violence or whatnot. But yeah, basically, multiple people had close to the same testimony of seeing that guy. There was actually a video somebody took from a field a couple hundred yards away from where the gunman was at, and they saw somebody laying down on top of the roof. So it's just crazy when the fact there were so many people that saw the gunman, but the Secret Service did not. I wanted to talk about now the gunman who committed this act. I was identified as 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. Was immediately neutralized by the Secret Service. Used a semi-automatic rifle. A couple things about this guy is what I saw. His parents were actually pretty well to do. I think there's a family they made anywhere between $300,000 to $400,000. But this guy, in general, he actually all we know about him politically is that he donated $15 toward Act Blue, which is a progressive campaign. But then he registered as a Republican 8 months later and was still registered as a Republican up to yesterday when he committed that violent act. I know that he was a big follower of a neutral, apolitical gun YouTuber. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but I wanted to talk about, because a lot of people, of course, ever since this have happened, have brought up their own theories of, oh, who was it that was trying to kill Trump? Was it, the super far left person? You have all these, conservatives that are bringing that up. But there's a really good story in Drop Site by Ryan Grimm. This is a new website, by the way. I highly recommend people check it out. This is guys who used to work for The Intercept, Jeremy Scahill and Ryan Grimm. So there's more to the story about that $15 donation because everybody's trying to point to that saying, oh, he's some sort of a hard leftist. But it was one of those PACs because he donated on the day of the inauguration in 2021 when Biden, was inaugurated as the new president. And the donation came as a response to basically all the emails about tuning into the inauguration. Kind of tells little about his politics. He was a minor at the time, 17 years old. Contributions are legal for minors, but there are limits to those. So basically, what this shows right here is that, A is such a little amount, and B, it wasn't like he was, spending that money because he, strictly, hated Donald Trump or loved Joe Biden. I've seen a lot of people pop up theories. A couple that make the most sense to me is there's a good chance that this person, got into politics maybe in right after the 2016 election, maybe was a big Bernie fan potentially, and then of course he wasn't able to get elected, and then basically when you're a young person, and if he doesn't have a lot of friends, you're kind of just going wherever you can get info and potentially becoming radicalized, and he got radicalized in the worst way possible. But of course that's all just speculation. I don't want to go too far on that. But I just wanted to bring this up because there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be bringing up the fact of, oh, this person must have been a super far left person. In reality, we really don't know that. All we know is that he was a registered for Republican. So for all we know, he could even be a super far right person, even a Nazi that hated the fact that Trump was, getting rid of bump stocks and that he wasn't a super far right person when it came to gun control. So, there's so many different perspectives out there, but I think that we need to just let, time take place, let investigations take place, and then we'll kind of go from there. But again, there's a lot of info on this. And with that being said, I wanted to talk to somebody about this issue, and I'm happy to bring in a good friend of mine. I want to make sure that my screen sharing is done here. I believe that it is done. Sorry. Okay, I think we're good here. Perfect. So I wanted to bring on two of my good friends. They are the co-hosts of the Let's Be Blunt No Filter podcast. You can find them on Spotify or on Apple. I want to bring up my friends Erik, Romero, Cruz, Kayellia. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this here today. This is obviously a huge issue, and is going to have a big impact with how things are going to play out going forward with the election, most likely. First off, tell me, where you guys were at when you guys saw this video and just your initial thoughts when you guys saw it.
Actually, we were driving to Sacramento because we were gonna attend a couple parties, and Kayla brought it to my attention. She's like, "Hey, did you hear there was an assassination attempt on Trump?" And I was like, "What? There's no way. There's absolutely no way in today's age, with all the cameras that we have, with people having phones, there's no way someone would have the balls to do this." So we kind of started like looking into it, and yeah, like a lot of people were covering it. So that's where I learned about it. I'm not sure where she learned about it.
I am on YouTube probably most of the day. If it's the daytime, I'm on YouTube, and if it's nighttime, I'm usually watching something on actual TV. But so I was, as soon as one of my favorite creators on YouTube, she covered it like almost instantly, and so I didn't watch the video yet. I just read the title, and I had watched about 30 seconds of the video, so I had told Erik what had happened, and because I looked it up just to confirm it, because I don't just go with what everybody says.
And then I think you had sent out a text, and you used the word capped. So Kayla was like, "Oh, what do you mean? Like, he got shot at?" And I was like, "I don't think he means like shot at. I think he means like, capped in a different sense." So we were kind of like, when we saw the assassination attempt, I was like, "Is that what Aaron was talking about? Was he talking about like Trump? Like he was about to be shot, like killed, assassin? You know?"
Yeah, because when I saw it, it was I honestly was probably 2 minutes behind from the actual news of what was going on. All of a sudden, I saw it was trending everywhere, and I saw somebody sent me a picture. They're like, "This just happened," and I looked it up, and it was literally like 2 3 minutes later. So one of my friends out in SAC kind of let me know about it and all. But yeah, no, it's absolutely crazy. Again, this is the first assassination attempt on a president or former president since Ronald Reagan in 1981. So, that's been, 43 years. It's absolutely crazy. Our parents were, probably, kids, at that time,
Yeah.
So, but no, first off, I wanted to have you guys on too, because Kayla, and I'm sorry because I was still trying to get everything together. I pronounce your last name is Lansdowne, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's close enough. Okay, cool. I wanted to say thank you because for everybody who doesn't know, she actually helped make this logo for me for the podcast that's behind me. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that. But
I'll be
obviously,
putting your name on it soon. I've had a lot going on this weekend.
oh no, you're good. Hey, I'm happy with how it's turned out so far, and of course, things are only going to get better, hopefully, with this channel going forward. But no, I wanted to have you guys on as well because we always have really good discussions on your guys' podcast, and I thought this was something that would be a good discussion to have, and I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into this. I think one thing that people have talked about a little bit with this issue is there what will this how will this impact the division in the country? Because a lot of people were saying, if Trump did end up dying from that, who knows? Would we end up having a civil war? Would there be people out there rioting in the streets? And I think that's definitely a possibility. I wanted to start with this, though. Do you think what happened yesterday was ultimately the expected conclusion from seeing the increasing divide in this country over the last decade, regarding just the language that's used, the coverage of different people of all sides in media? What's your guys' thought on that? Do you think this was an expected consequence of the impact that the division has had?
I wish it wasn't, but when you use words like Hitler and dictator, it makes people scared. And even like if it wasn't for the divide, like it's people are scared of things like that. I know people who in my life who have said, if I could go back in time and assassinate one person, it would be Hitler. So when you use words to describe like a person today like that, it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, and not only that, you know, I feel like the division has always been there, but it definitely has, you know, accelerated that division because you got, you know, you had people, liberals, and everybody like that. They're like, yeah, we need to assassinate him. We need to get rid of Trump. And now that there's been an actual attempt, you kind of see both sides really come out, and they've gone now to an extreme. Like, people are talking like they have conspiracy theories already. They're talking about how it might have been fake. You might have heard just popping sounds. That Trump fell to the ground, and it's crazy. Like it's crazy. Like everything you just hear when shit hits the fan. You know.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note too that a lot of those conspiracy theories and the violent rhetoric too really has come from both sides because you have conspiracies out there, people saying, "Oh, was this something that was set up by Biden? Was it set up by the campaign to try to increase his election chances?" You also see, obviously, there was, what happened on January 6th, which honestly, a lot of the people that ended up dying did end up coming from the police that were there on that day of the people who were, rioting over after the election. But overall, it just seems like that, everything. It's weird. It feels like that we honestly are living in a simulation. It feels like we're living in a TV show because everything that's led up to here is kind of led to this. And I don't know if you watch this, but I think a lot of people who watch this show maybe will know what I'm talking about. There's a show out there right now called The Boys, and especially this season, along with a lot of other seasons, are really kind of based on the political nature that we have in this country. And there's a lot of things that are kind of based on the last 7-8 years that have happened. That show is not as crazy as some of the things that we see in real life out here now. That's the crazy things that of what has happened really. But to expand on the point of the division, do you guys feel that what happened with this? And I kind of talked about before I brought you guys in. The shooter. We really don't know a ton yet about the person in terms of their political viewpoints. They seem to be relatively apolitical outside of a small donation that was made and then registering as a Republican. But do you feel that what happened here will end up increasing this further divide? I'll start with that and then I'll kind of expand on it.
I think it depends on how it's covered and how everyone, especially politically, responds to this. Because this could be the last assassination attempt, like you did, especially the one, the assassination that went through. After it happened, this country was united for a bit. We were all united against one threat. And that's kind of how it is if you have one threat, no matter who it is, if it's an extremist threat, it's against this country, and we unite as a country to fight that threat. So I think it could be unifying, but also this could be the worst divide that ever. So it all depends on how it's covered, I think.
Yeah, I think definitely it's like I said, I think it's just really pushing on that divide because you don't really see people being like really sympathetic with what happened to Trump because at the end of the day, Trump is a person, a human, just like anybody else. And a lot of people aren't focusing on that. They're just like, oh, we're gonna get that Republican out of here. And it's like show your humanity. Like you guys, I think Kayla brought it to my attention that the Supreme Court had actually came out with some law where what was it? It was
So
they're
I think
allowed to
I think
take
what you're
out
referring
campaign
to.
candidates.
Well, what you're referring to, I think, is basically the decision that came out. Now, I don't remember exactly what this was regarding to, but basically official acts versus unofficial acts, and basically what the president is allowed to do. And that actually goes. I remember it goes back to back to Trump actually, and January 6th. So it actually relates back to that. And what people were saying, and I think the point you're trying to make is people are saying, oh, well, technically Biden, if he says it's an official act, could go out there and assassinate the president.
Exactly. And not only that is we were talking about it earlier too, and we said, "Will Biden actually take the fault for what happened today?" And are we going to stake it as July? What was it? July 12th when this happened?
Well, yes, yesterday was the 13th, so 13th.
It was the 13th.
Yeah.
So are we gonna coin this now, July 13th, as the new January 6th? So
Yeah, and the thing is, it's really hard too, because I think that this is something that's obviously going to go down in the history books. And as I mentioned too before you guys came on, that picture of him putting his fist up is going to be something that's going to live in history, and it's going to be something that's going to be a picture hanging up in 100 years time.
I'm making shirts coming soon.
Oh, don't worry. I'm sure there's some that are already out there. I think I've already seen some tattoos out there too. But no. What I was going to say is the difference. I think is unfortunately, this is I guess in this sense, not unfortunately, but you have an individual gunman. There's certainly people out there that are, talking about, oh, I wish that, he hadn't missed and stuff like that. There's definitely out there. But the point I'm trying to make is I think that the difference between January 6th and this, that, you can make regarding that argument is, this is an individual gunman who could simply just be a crazy person like the guy at Mandalay Bay in Vegas a few years ago. Whereas, January 6th was, a group of people. Now, look, I think we should treat all of these as tragedies. I'm certainly a person that thinks January 6th, in regards to it basically being the next 9/11, is a tragedy, is ridiculous. I think that, the way that is looked at versus so many other acts of terrorism, whether it be school shootings, whether it be mass shootings in general, whether it be other terrorist attacks, or, even, what we do by, with our military killing innocent people overseas, I think are way more of an existential threat to democracy than January 6th, in my opinion. However, I do think that there is a little bit of a discrepancy there. But I did want to, carry on the front of, talking about Trump, because one thing that, I could definitely see, and who knows, it's something that, could happen, it couldn't happen, but, obviously, going through something like this, it could be a very traumatic experience. And, I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, if Trump does end up winning election in 2024, which he's ahead in a lot of the polls right now, do you think that he will enact any policies that could relate to either A, gun control, or B, targeting political opponents?
I don't think so much he'd actually enact new laws, and try to make gun control stricter, because he has always ran on the idea of, people should have their Second Amendment right. They should be able to bear arms.
And one of his biggest backings is the NRA, so I don't think he'd go against them right now.
Yeah, and so just having that background of him, being so supportive of it, I think he's just gonna kind of look at this as like, oh, it was a whatever to him. It kind of helped me, instead of, I know you guys were trying to take me down, but it really just boosted everything in my favor. So I think he's just gonna see it as a whatever. And
I almost think he's going to see it as an ego boost. So I don't think he's going to enact like much around it, because I don't think he's going to see it as a bad thing. He's going to be like, yeah, like, you guys took me out and I didn't get taken out. So it's kind of going to boost his own ego in a way, which, I mean, if you had one person you didn't need to boost his ego anymore, it was Trump.
Yeah, and he's
and that's being somebody who's probably voting for him. He didn't need this ego boost. Right. But like, on the targeting political opponents, I don't know why I can't say that. I think he might have the Supreme Court change the decision a little bit to be a little bit stricter on the wording and the like assassination of political opponents by the SEAL Team 6. I don't think anybody wants anybody to be assassinated as the political opponent. I don't think anybody wants anything to be unfair like that. Especially, like, that's why I don't think he's ever been running on the term of being a dictator. It's always been he wanted to win in the terms of winning. Like, he didn't want to just take the other person out. Like, that's not really winning in that term. That's kind of a cop out.
The only reason that I brought up the potential to enact gun control for him is because I know that when he was in office, he had a strict ban on bump stocks, and I know that that got um, some people that are very strong Second Amendment advocates against him actually for a period of time. Now, of course, that also came in a response, actually, I believe, to the Mandalay Bay shooting that happened within the year prior. But because of the fact that it's within the year prior and it's something that he has specifically gone through himself, I just wonder if there's anything that could happen on that front. But as you mentioned, he is funded by the NRA. A lot of Republicans get massive funding from the NRA, so you also would risk damaging yourself and your base in some respects if you do something like that. And even though I happen to disagree with a lot of Trump's policies, I think that in regards to catering to his base is probably one of his bigger strengths. We kind of talked about this a little bit already, but you were saying, if the coverage changes, we've seen a lot of things with media. We've seen a lot of changes with media ever since Trump got elected in 2016. But the one thing that really has remained the same is the continuous breaking news banner, and they're talking of Trump, whether it be in whatever light. Do you expect the media to change course in the way that they cover or talk about Trump in any way following this act?
I think me and Kayla have seen a little bit of what's already going on in the media and just kind of the way they word specific titles. I know they're trying to show a little bit of sympathy, but I feel like they're really going to just run on, trying to not boost his numbers and show as much sympathy. I feel like they're just going to kind of stay on trying to bash him as much as possible without it coming off too strong right now. But definitely once this blows over, I feel like it's just going to go back to the same thing. I feel like it's just going to go back to, oh, he's a dictator, he's Hitler, he's all these awful things again. So I think this is just kind of like a bump in the road, so to say, kind of like to show, oh, we have morality, we have whatever it is. But the way some of them are representing, what happened is kind of crazy. Like I said, like they were saying, oh, it might have been fake. It might have been a setup. And using things like that, it kind of discredits a lot of these media platforms. So I don't know. I'd like to see maybe a more honest overview of this, more than trying to just get people to follow behind you like you have been, previously already done. So
I guess that because the media swings more left, I get why they don't want Trump to win, so they're not going to cover him like, oh, like this was, they're not going to keep covering this like it's a bad thing, and they will eventually switch back to like, we don't want him to win, so he is these things. I think though, if it were to be the opposite and it was to switch to like being so left, if it was just in the middle and we didn't have a bias in our news and they just gave us the facts, and it was more, I feel like it would be more unifying for this country if the media was just completely unbiased, because right now it's hard to get an accurate depiction of the coverage of Trump. And yeah, it's been all negative. I think if they were just to go straight and give us facts, I think more people were to actually trust the news. But right now, I think that people don't trust the news at all. And the people who are trust the news way too much. So it's like, what do we do?
I think the biggest bias for a very long time, I actually would argue, I don't think that it is right or left. I mean, I think there's definitely sites out there that, string one, land one way or the other. But I think in general, especially with mainstream media, I think the main bias is towards sensationalism. And so what I'm afraid of when it comes to this is that we're going to see a lot more coverage in the coming days of Fox talking about, the left wing conspiracies. And then you're going to have a lot of people on, CNN and MSNBC see, they're going to be talking about, oh, look at all these people bashing Democrats when it wasn't even a Democrat that did this. And I think what it's going to do is it's really, the reason I worry about the division and the impact that this could have on it is because I worry if the coverage does go that way, which is very possible, because at the end of the day, media companies in this country, their main goal is to make money. And so it's not to inform the public, it's to make money for themselves and their shareholders. And so what I worry about is that I think that we could easily see much more sensationalism coverage on a topic that could very well get a lot of eyeballs in sensationalistic ways that could lead to more division in that sense. So I think that, it's going to be very interesting going forward, especially as we get into the thick of the election, and buckle up because there's still a lot of things that can happen between now and then. I guess my question, for you guys on that front regarding the impact that this has on the actual election, do you guys feel that this will affect the race? And if so, do you expect Trump to rise in polls? And do you think that the Democrats can prevent it at all if they get Biden out of the picture?
I think that this is going to affect the race, and the fact that a lot of people are going to have support for Trump that even didn't have support for Trump before, because of the way it's been handled by him, the way he kind of didn't back down in the face of like being shot at. But ultimately, I don't think that there's anything that the Democrats can do at this point. It's far too late, and they've doubled down too much on Biden. So even if they get him out now, it's going to show all the people who have backed him this far. It's going to show that they're not trustworthy either, and they don't even have faith in their own opinions and their own candidate, that they're going to pull it last minute. So I don't think either way it's going to be good, because right now Biden is a very weak candidate, but I don't think that they can switch either without looking like they completely have no idea what they've been doing up until this point. So
yeah, and I believe that, even with Trump standing there and holding his fist in the air and being like, I won't back down, I feel like that kind of took that was enough for the people that were kind of leaning towards, I'm not going to vote for this side or this side. I feel like it really took them to the Republican side, and they're like, you know what, I'm switching for this guy. Look at him. He stands up. He is definitely for this country. He will stand up no matter what gets in his way. So I think this was very much that leaning point for a lot of people that were on the border of not voting and voting. So that's just kind of how I see it.
Yeah, I could see that as well. I think it's going to be interesting to see on that front. I've already seen a lot of people that I've seen some people that have put out shirts saying, if you shoot at the king, you best not miss, and and stuff related to that. And so it's going to, I think, bring a lot more people. You mentioned that don't happen to fall on either side. I think it's going to bring a lot of apolitical people out there, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because I think initially you might see them drawn to the Republican side. But the one thing that Democrats still have in their pocket right now is still bringing up the abortion issue and stuff like that, because that's an issue where Trump does not pull favorably. But again, you talking about the rallying effort behind a person in a time of crisis or a time of need. We've seen that with many different instances. It's interesting because we are in a very different country, I'd argue, now than we have been in the past. But if things go in that light, it's hard to not see Trump winning in some sort of landslide. Before I let you guys go, I wanted to touch on a couple more things. It's going to be really interesting to see the polling data this week. Right now, looking at 538. In fact, let me go ahead and pull this up on the screen for everybody who's tuning in here. There we go. You can see right here, since July 1st, it's gone from 1.4 point lead for Trump up to all as high as 2.3, and is now at 1.9. I expect this to change a lot, honestly, over the next week, and it's going to be very interesting to see how these polls really change going forward. I also wanted to bring up, because one thing, and this goes for any mass shooting, of course, in this case, we had one person that was dead and one person critically injured. I have not seen if that person who was critically injured ended up making it out okay, or if they're still critically injured. I'm still waiting to get more info on that. However, what we see in any mass shootings is a lot of talk about the shooter, but we don't see a lot of talk about the victims. And I wanted to talk real quick about the victim of this attempted assassination. It's really sad. His name's Corey comparatori. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Basically, he sacrificed himself for his family. He dove on his family to protect him at the rally. His wife and his two daughters were there, and CNN talked to the wife, and yeah, basically he sacrificed himself for his family, and I just think that that's something that needs to get talked about, because you're going to see a lot of talk from the media. You've seen it already, and in the coming days of who is this shooter, and trying to get info on him. But this victim definitely deserves a lot of coverage as well, and I just hope that he's given the respect that he deserves. But with that being said, that's pretty much the main part of the issue I wanted to talk about. I wanted to thank you guys for coming on once again. I appreciate you guys for coming on and chatting with me here on this Sunday evening. And once again, if anybody wants to tune into your podcast, where should they go?
We are on Twitter, we're on TikTok, we're on, I think, basically on every platform at this point: Instagram, Facebook, Reddit. Find us at Let's Be Blunt, no filter. We will be talking about this more in depth and more of the conspiratorial side of this. So if you guys really want to tune in and you guys are interested in maybe what's going on or the crazy ideas that everybody has going on, definitely tune in. I'll try to get it out possibly this week, or if not, the following week, but definitely coming out very shortly here.
I can say for myself that they do a great job as hosts, and I've been on a few shows. Some of my views have changed since then, but I've been on quite a bit, and I appreciate you guys for that too. So thank you guys for coming on once again, and I will talk to you guys again soon. You guys take care.
All right. Thank you for having us, Aaron. Appreciate you.
Of course. All right, so that was Kayellia Lansdowne and Erik Romero Cruz. Thanks to them once again for joining me on the show. Again, wanted to touch on that. I think that that's the most important issue this week. I originally was actually going to be talking about something else, but that kind of just overdid everything what happened yesterday. And I was talking about some positive stuff. I kind of want to move on to an issue where it's going to start with some negativity, but will eventually actually lead to some positive stuff. And that is actually the issue that was originally going to be my main issue for the week, and that's athletes and mental health. And I wanted to bring this up because we have the Olympics coming up here right around the corner, and Simone Biles is going to be captaining the U.S. Gymnastics team, and of course, just a few years ago, for anybody who's a sports fan, they would know that she has undergone some mental health struggles herself. So I wanted to go ahead and pull up some articles here. This kind of talks about her mental health break from last year. So what we can learn from it. So basically, she said, I worked on myself a lot. She still does weekly therapy. It's been exciting to be able to come out and have more confidence than she had before. What she had was a case of the twisties in the Tokyo Olympics. Basically, what that is as far as I understand, people kind of, have a mental block. Actually shows right here, yeah, a mental block that causes gymnasts to lose track of their position in midair. And so she kind of took herself out of the Olympics, and there was a lot of people that were kind of, criticizing her for doing that, saying that she was, letting her country down. But there, were even, former gymnasts and people who were doctors that said that it was a positive thing for her to be able to take that break. This doctor right here, Dr. Chloe Carmichael, I think that her strong performance validates the wisdom of her withdrawal and taking a break. It appears that she really did use the time to recharge, and that the break was in service of growth as an athlete and a professional, which was what she announced. Now she's demonstrating that in her own judgment, she is in the right place to perform well, and the proof is in the performance. And, she's not the first athlete that, has, taken a break, or that has had, mental health problems as well. Staying on the Olympic side of things, Michael Phelps, who is, arguably the greatest, United States Olympian of all time, in 2014, he checked himself into an inpatient treatment center where he spent 45 days. Of course, he didn't open up about all this stuff until relatively recently, over the last couple of years. Part of it, you could argue, is because it's just something that kind of gets pushed aside, or that people aren't really comfortable opening up about, or that in athletics, I guess they're told really not to open up about that kind of stuff, and just kind of keep it to themselves. But he's opened up about his issues, and I think it's a good thing seeing more of these athletes kind of talk about it. He said, quote, as soon as I came out, I continued the therapy that I had in my treatment center. For me, when I first started, it was kind of freaky, scary, something that was new. But then he began feeling mentally well after he left the facility. I started feeling like a person. I guess I could love myself and like who I saw. I think for a long time I looked at myself as a swimmer and not a human being. So being able to learn more about me and how I worked, why I worked that way through treatment, and unpacking all of the extra stuff I had inside of me. So, I want to bring this up because I think that a lot of athletes, go through periods of burnout, depression, anxiety, and I think it's important, if anybody is dealing with, anything on that front, it's important to, seek help, and open up about it to, friends, anybody that, is still in, college, high school level, open up to, your professors, teachers, open up to counselors, if possible, your family. I just know it's a, very serious issue. And I know that, it's still something that impacts a lot of people. In fact, according to the American College of Sports Medicine, I want to say that the number, yeah, 30% of women and 25% of men who are student athletes report having anxiety. 10% of all college athletes with well-known mental health conditions seek care from a mental health professional. So that's really not a lot. There's still a lot of people out there that just kind of keep it bottled up, and that can affect them in negative ways when it comes to their goals regarding their career, or when it comes to potentially their athletics as well. So I just thought that this was an important issue to bring up as the Olympics are right around the corner. And of course, we're going to be seeing probably a lot of Biles' story, and obviously seeing some great athletics out there. But I think it's just really important to note of that while we can celebrate these athletes for their accomplishments and what they do for their country or for their team, their club, whatever, at the end of the day, a person's physical and mental well-being, I think, is more important than anything. Going away from that, I actually wanted to touch on a local issue here, and this actually relates to athletics as well. It's really sick, but it's something that I wanted to touch on because this is something that shows that there are things that go on in athletics that people really don't even know about. There was a Roseville wrestling coach who was sentenced over sexual assaults with minors. An Olympian and youth wrestling coach in Roseville was sentenced to 19 years and 4 months after a jury found him guilty of sexually assaulting minors, the Placer County District Attorney's Office said. This came back on July 9th, so that was 5 days ago on Tuesday. Quincy Clark was accused of repeatedly assaulting minor victims while training them in his home wrestling gym. He was found guilty during a trial in April and then sentenced on Monday. Victims were present in court for the sentencing. Clark was arrested back in 2022 and accused of crimes from July through September. So it just shows that at any level there could be in any place there's things that can be going on people don't even know about, and regard whatever because this affects obviously mental health as well. If there's ever anything going on regarding sexual assault, which is a more serious thing, or even smaller thing, that's important to reach out to people and make sure that especially in cases like this, that justice is justice takes its course. So I wanted to bring that up because that's something that actually affects athletics and is more local, and I just thought it would be I thought it'd be important to bring up. Another thing I wanted to bring up that is really been on my mind recently, and is actually we've seen some updates regarding a couple stories on this realm, is infrastructure. And specifically, I wanted to start by talking about train derailments because we have an update out of what happened in East Palestine just a couple of years ago, or sorry, early last year in East Palestine, Ohio. This comes on July 10th, so this was back on Wednesday. Norfolk Southern said on Wednesday that it had agreed to implement a series of safety recommendations made by the National Transportation Safety Board following the train derailment in February 2023 that spilled toxic chemicals. NTSB Chair Jennifer Hormandy and other senior agency officials met in Atlanta on Wednesday with Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw and other officials for about 3 hours after she had harshly criticized the railroad in June, saying that executives had threatened the board, sought to manufacture evidence, and failed to provide documents. This comes at a time where the company has lost massive amounts of money in the stock market. Their percentages are just way down in pretty much every way imaginable. Hormandy on Wednesday praised the railroad and said Shaw took told her he was interested in finding a way to exceed our recommendations. I think there's a real commitment to safety and working together to move forward. She added, I always will, I'm never going to, say that I'm looking through this in a positive light, especially with any corporation, until we actually see this put in practice. But at least it's good to see that, they are trying to take, more safety measures going forward. But I feel horrible for the citizens in East Palestine that, had to inhale all those toxic chemicals until everything got cleaned up over there. But we see train derailments really all around the country, and it feels like it's something that is never just something that you see once a year. It seems like it's always news every year. In fact, and I'll go ahead and pull up this chart for you guys, and I'll share this for you too. Go ahead and pull this up. These are countries with the most number of rail accidents from 2010 to 2019. So the United States, 124. India is the next with 60. UK with 30, and then it kind of goes down from there. And a couple of countries that aren't on this list that have some of the best high-speed rail systems in the world are Japan and China. China, of which has really developed it over the last 15, 20 years. Japan is a country that, of course, is known for having a really good infrastructure system and having really good high-speed rail. But of course, you see a lot of these countries right here that, are either, don't have as good of infrastructure or transportation, or poor that aren't able to do it. In this case, the United States, which has a lot of money, still does not have really high speed rail. So I just thought it was interesting to bring up. I think that if we had a infrastructure project to really focus on and build a high-speed rail, I think that you would see, a lot less of these accidents, especially if it was done through public works programs. And this isn't the only thing that I think can be done through a public works program. I think that we can have other things with infrastructure that are done that way as well, because another issue that happened relatively recently, and a story just came out regarding a survivor of this, was the Baltimore Bridge collapse that happened earlier this year in March. This actually comes out of the Washington Post. Julio Cervantes Suarez was sitting in his truck in the early hours of March 26 with 6 other construction workers in their own vehicles as they took a break from fixing potholes on Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge. Then the 985-foot container ship Dolly slammed into one of the bridge's support pillars. The 37-year-old saw his coworkers vanish into the Patapsco River below. After his own vehicle plunged into the water, Cervantes Suarez said he was unable to open any doors and had to manually roll down the windows to escape. He said he scaled a slab of concrete from the wreckage and waited for rescue workers. He recounted the whole tragic incident to NBC News earlier this week. So, this is another thing too. Of course, we saw this where the entire bridge collapsed from what looked like a really small hit. Of course, the boat was, a very heavy, heavy ship. But these bridges should be made to be able to withstand a small hit like that. And it just shows that we have crumbling bridges and infrastructure really everywhere in this country. In fact, 1 in every 13 bridges in this country right now is in poor condition. Thousands could collapse from a collision. This comes from a story back in March, just a few days after that incident that happened in Baltimore. That Key Bridge, by the way, in Baltimore stood for 47 years. In America, there are 46,000 bridges which have aging structures and are in poor condition, 17,000 that are at risk of collapse from a single hit, according to the American Society of Civil Engineers and the federal government. And 7.5% of all bridges are considered structurally deficient or in poor condition, according to the most recent report card released in 2021 by the American Society of Civil Engineers. 178 million trips are taken across those structurally deficient bridges every single day. So, we're seeing in multiple realms, the impact that our decaying and crumbling infrastructure is having on this country. And, as I bring up that report card, and I'll go ahead and pull this up and share it for you guys as well. This is something that gets released every 4 years from the American Society of Civil Engineers. These are the infrastructure grades from 3 years ago in 2021, and really not much has changed since then in terms of having, programs to, rebuild a lot of these or make them better. The best category on here, ironically, is rail, which is a B. It could still be a lot better if we had high-speed rail, and then you have ports at B minus. But just look at these on here: bridges down to a C, drinking waters up to a C minus. That means it was even in the D category before this. Hazardous waste D plus, levees D, parks and recreation D plus, wastewater D plus. I mean, we basically average a C minus or a D in every single category on here. And, that's despicable, and it's horrible for a country that is as rich as the United States. And I really think that a solution to this, and something that we should be considering and pushing our, elected representatives for, is a New Deal, a public works program to rebuild the infrastructure, rebuild the bridges, rebuild the roads. Anybody that drives, especially here in California, and goes down to the Bay Area or really anywhere, and knows that there are plenty of roads that, are super herky-jerky to drive over that haven't been paved in decades. And that's a big problem, and we really need to do a better job to preserve the infrastructure we have. And we really need to find different ways to have better transportation for people, especially in poor areas, and especially now in a job in an economy where there really aren't a lot of jobs for people in specific fields. And if they do want to get a really good paying job in their field, they might have to travel relatively far away to do so. If you have a high-speed rail system, you could have somebody go from Sacramento to San Francisco in 45 minutes, and it's a reasonable trip. And there's going to be more opportunities out there than they may have up here in the valley. So I just think that we really need to consider that going forward if we want to still have a successful economy, and if we want to have a successful infrastructure, and really be looked at as a leader in the world of something that is actually important. So I pretty much just wanted to talk about that. That pretty much covers the show. A little bit of a shorter one today compared to last week, but still got in everything I pretty much wanted to cover. There is one final thing I wanted to touch on. Anybody who can see, I'm wearing my ceasefire shirt. Again, this is something that I plan on wearing every week on this show until we actually get some real change out of the Middle East. And unfortunately, the numbers are not improving over there. In fact, Biden just authorized 500-pound bombs to be sent to Israel once again. And I'll go ahead and pull this up from the Euromed monitor here. Again, this is a very conservative figure. This is by the Gaza-run public health, Gaza Ministry of Public Health, which is Hamas ran, but these are very conservative numbers to other numbers I've seen, which are as high as 186,000, 46,846 according to the Euromed Human Rights Monitor, over 88,000 injured, just nearly 90% of the population displaced, 152 journalists killed. I think 80% of the homes are basically unlivable now in Gaza. 381 healthcare facilities, 276 civil defense workers, 203 heritage sites. Again, it's super sad. It's super important to please push your congressmen and women for a ceasefire in the Middle East. It's been ridiculous how long it's gotten. I know that Netanyahu is going to be coming to speak to Congress very soon here in the coming days, or I think within the next couple of weeks. And I hope that there's a lot of pressure, a lot of protesters that are at that. I think, Netanyahu's really hoping that Trump gets reelected because, honestly, he was able to do even more, I think, under Trump than under Biden. I don't really expect things to change if Trump gets elected on this front. Don't really expect things to change if Biden's elected either. But I think that, there have been signs that Kamala Harris has been called for a ceasefire a couple of times. And, we got to work with what we got on this issue until, something actually changes in a positive direction. So I wanted to bring that up. It's also interesting, seeing all of the people online talking about, Trump. Oh, we got to pray for Trump, pray for his family. But there have been, a million drops of blood spilled in Gaza, and nobody says a peep. So very interesting, the hypocrisy on that side here in this country. But that's pretty much going to do it. Again, I appreciate everybody for tuning in to episode 2 of the Liberation Hour. Again, if anybody has any recommendations, any thoughts, anything they want me to talk about in the future at all, please let me know. Either comment on this video, shoot me a DM, and I will definitely look to touch on that soon. But that is going to do it for this episode. Until next week, take care. Peace out, everyone.